August 17, 1943, Allied WWII, near Bath, northern Germany. The morning air smells of wet pine and coal smoke. Barbed wire hums softly as the wind moves through it. Inside Barracks 7, Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Weber sits on a wooden bunk, fingers wrapped around a chipped tin mug that holds thin black coffee. He has been here for 3 weeks. Weber was shot down over Schweinfurt at 26,000 feet, his Focke-Wulf FW-190A6 spiraling through contrails and flak bursts. Now he is a prisoner of war. Round him the barracks is waking. These are experienced pilots, veterans of France, of Russia, of the Channel Front. Men who still believe Germany will endure. The belief is necessary. The door swings open. Entretien, a guard calls. Assemble, they file outside. The camp commandant, Oberstleutnant Wilhelm Krüger, stands near a portable board. Beside him is an unfamiliar man in civilian clothes. This will be brief, Krüger says. What you see today is information, nothing more. The civilian pins a sheet of paper to the board. Then another numbers. Columns. Headings in English. A guard translates slowly. United States aircraft production monthly totals. Weber leans forward, squinting. He recognizes the aircraft names. B-17. Flying Fortress B-24 Liberator. P-47 Thunderbolt P-51 Mustang. The first number makes him frown. Then the second, then the third. That's impossible. Hauptmann Friedrich Lenz mutters beside him. They're lying, the guard continues. July 1943. Total aircraft produced, approximately 8,800. Weber does the math, 8,800 in 1 month. More aircraft than his entire Geschwader has ever possessed. A voice from the back. Hauptmann Ernst Vogel, a night fighter pilot. Read it again, the guard does. No one speaks now. Krüger clears his throat. These figures come from captured shipping records, factory reports, and American publications. They are not estimates, they are confirmed. Weber feels something shift in his chest. He thinks of his last mission. 12 B-17s shot down, a celebrated success. 12. The board shows that America replaces those losses before the day is over. Another sheet is added, a graph this time, a rising line steep and relentless. January 1942, the guard reads, approximately 3,000 aircraft per month. Another pause. July 1943, nearly triple. A low murmur spreads through the ranks. This is not shouting, not outrage. It is calculation. Pilots are trained to calculate fuel consumption. Ammunition, not altitude. Time to attrition. Weber thinks of the factory in Kassel, bombed twice in 1 week. He thinks of mechanics cannibalizing wrecks to keep a handful of fighters operational. He thinks of the new boys arriving from flight school with barely 120 hours in the air. Across the yard, someone whispers, even if we shoot down 5 for everyone. The sentence is never finished. Krüger watches their faces carefully. He has chosen this moment deliberately. The civilian closes the folder. This is a war of machines, Krüger says quietly. And machines require factories. Weber stares at the numbers until they blur. For the first time since he parachuted into that beat field, the war feels larger than skill, larger than courage, larger than ideology. It feels mathematical, and mathematics does not care who is brave. The ranks break slowly, not dismissed so much as released from gravity. Men drift back toward the barracks in small clusters, voices low. Inside Barracks 7, the air is heavy. Weber sits on his bunk staring at the floorboards. Around him, the pilots talk with the precise, clipped language of men trained to analyze failure. 8,800, Lenz says again, pulling a stub of pencil from his pocket. Let's say half are trainers and transports. That still leaves more than 4,000 combat aircraft. Vogel leans against a support beam. And that's 1 month. Weber looks up. Our entire output before the bombing intensified was what, 2,000? Lenz finishes his arithmetic. If they lose 500 bombers in a month, he says, they still gain 3,000 aircraft. Net gain, a younger pilot, Lieutenant Hans Richter, shakes his head. They can't train crews fast enough. Planes are useless without men. Weber replies, they are training crews. We see them every day. New formations, new tactics. New fighters. That afternoon, Weber walks the perimeter fence. He remembers his first combat sortie in 1940 over the Channel. The RAF had seemed endless then. He wonders if the British pilots had felt like this. That evening, in the camp library, Weber finds an English-language magazine. Inside are photographs, rows of aircraft on factory floors, women riveting fuselages. A caption reads, "Willow Run Plant, Michigan." The scale is difficult to grasp. The article mentions output targets measured not in months, but in hours. "One bomber every hour," Weber murmurs. Later, Richter lies awake. "My instructor told us the Americans were soft, that they wouldn't last," Vogel exhales. Comfort builds factories. A few days later, another presentation. The topic is logistics, fuel trucks, rail capacity. The guard explains how American factories are spread across the continent. Damage to one plant barely registers. New prisoners arrive, men shot down over Berlin itself. They bring stories not of fear but of scale. "They never stopped coming," one tail gunner says. "Even after we burned half their formation, the next wave was already visible." Weber listens, fitting these accounts into the framework the numbers have built. It is no longer emotional. It is structural. Germany can win battles. America is building the war. One evening, Lenz produces another scrap of paper. "I've been thinking," he says quietly, "even if we double our kill ratio, even if jet fighters arrive in numbers, even if every new pilot is perfect," he looks up. "We cannot destroy factories faster than they build them." The statement lands without drama. No one challenges it. There is a strange relief in the clarity. Weber feels it settle over him, heavy but stable, like trimming an aircraft into level flight after turbulence. The future is still uncertain. The war is not over, but the direction is unmistakable. Outside, beyond the wire, a distant rumble rolls across the horizon. Bombers heading east or west. It no longer matters. Weber closes his eyes and listens, not to count engines, but to understand time. The camp settles into winter. Frost creeps along the inside of the barrack windows. By December, the production figures are a reference point. New information circulates quietly. A British officer confirms what the Luftwaffe men already suspect. "They're not slowing down," he says. "They're speeding up." Weber keeps a mental ledger. The war has turned into an equation. One afternoon, the guards allow a discussion group. A large map is spread across a table. Kruger gestures to the west. "You flew against them," he says. "What do you think wins this war?" There is a long pause. Finally, Vogel speaks. "Range." Kruger nods. "Production," Lenz adds. Another nod. Weber clears his throat. "Time." All eyes turn to him. "They can afford to trade time for losses," Weber continues. "We cannot. Every month that passes, their strength compounds. Ours diminishes." Later, in the barracks, Richter sits on his bunk, helmet cradled in his hands. "If we had started earlier," Weber shakes his head, "it wouldn't have mattered. Not at this scale." In January 1944, the camp receives newspapers mentioning massive air battles over Germany. That night, the bombers pass overhead in waves. In February, a new batch of prisoners arrives from the Eastern Front. They speak of shortages, of grounded aircraft, of fuel measured in minutes. One of them, a maintenance officer, stares at Weber. "They build more planes in a week," he says, "than we can keep flying in a month." The camp grows quieter after that. The war is no longer about who flies better. It is about who can replace loss with abundance. One evening, Weber sits alone, watching snow collect on the wire. He thinks of the factory workers in Michigan, in California, in Texas. Men and women he will never meet, but whose labor determines everything. For the first time, he allows himself to think the unthinkable. Not surrender, not defeat, but inevitability. When he opens his eyes, the war has not changed, but his understanding of it has. Spring arrives hesitantly, turning the camp paths into mud. With it comes a new rhythm of sound overhead. The bombers no longer pass in isolated streams. They arrive in structured layers, a continuous mechanical thunder. In March 1944, a captured American civilian engineer delivers a lecture. He talks about factories. How many workers does one plant employ? Richter asks. The engineer smiles. 30,040. Some more. And if one is bombed? Vogel asks. Then production shifts, the engineer replies. We plan for loss. Afterward, in the barracks, Lenz says slowly, "Do you realize we never planned for this kind of enemy?" "We planned for France," Weber replies. "For Poland, for Britain. For a continent," Vogel adds, "not a world." The acceptance that settles over the camp is not defeatism. The war is no longer personal. In April, news filters in of heavy losses, but the replacement numbers are relentless. Weber receives a letter from home. His sister writes of sirens and ration cards. She does not mention hope, she mentions endurance. One evening, Richter asks the question everyone has been avoiding. When this ends, what happens to men like us? Finally, Weber speaks. We learn from it, or we repeat it. Outside, the sound of engines grows, then fades. Weber lies on his bunk that night, staring at the ceiling. He understands now that courage cannot outproduce steel. When sleep finally comes, it is deep and dreamless. The war will continue without him, and it will end without him.